When the waves of life come crashing down, the Lord will calm your storm. The soulful voice of T. Graham Brown has been heard all over the country music airwaves for decades. His initial top 40 single, Drowning in Memories, paved his entry to country radio, and by the winter of 1986, he was entertaining his fans with his bluesy hits, I Tell You Like It Used to Be, and his first #1 song, Hell and High Water. But God had to slow him down to work out a few of his own high water challenges. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. T. Graham, what a pleasure it is to sit down. I am so excited to hear about your story, your amazing faith, your journey in music.
Well, I got some stories. Terry. You know what I like is that you had a pre-show prayer, because we always have a pre-show prayer on our bus. I got a great saxophone player named Tim Coleman. He's a pastor. His mom and daddy were both pastors. He's got 13 brothers and sisters, and he can pray it down. So
it is important.
We have a group of Bible-believing Christian men on our bus, and women. We just try to do what we think God wants us to do, you know. I mean, I have no absolute knowledge of what God wants me to do, you know. I just use my discernment and unction. And
well,
if you tap into the Holy Spirit, see, you get some guidance. And it took me a long time to figure that out. A long time. I got peace of mind. I never knew what peace of mind meant until I just finally figured it out. It was just visited upon me, you know. It's just one of those things that...
Do you remember that time?
Well, not a precise moment. It seemed like it was just a gradual thing. I was brought up in the Baptist church. I mean, I always went to church. And my folks were in the church. My daddy was a deacon in the church, and we all sang in the choir, and my grandmother played piano in her church. And, you know, I was brought up, and I guess I got baptized when I was, I think, 11. But I don't think I really knew what was going on, you know. I've always been a believer. I mean, there's never been a time, ever, that I didn't believe that Jesus Christ was born of a Virgin Mary, lived a perfect life, was beaten and whipped and just scarred up, and was crucified and died, was placed in a tomb. Joseph of Arimathea, he was rich, you know, he gave. I think he was Jesus' uncle, maybe. But anyway, that Jesus died, was put in the tomb, and was raised, you know, to everlasting life. And I've never wavered on that one bit.
What a beautiful belief. And he is alive, and he's with us today. And T. Graham, I'm going to take you back.
I was born in Atlanta. My daddy was over there going to school, but we have a family farm. Both sides of my family are farmers. So I grew up in an agricultural family. I was showing some people some pictures the other day of me riding a John Deere tractor plowing. You know, people say, man, you didn't do that. You hear these country music guys singing about John Deere tractors. I bet they never have even been on one, but I've been out in the field. And so anyway, Daddy graduated from the University of Georgia. He worked his way through school, and Mama worked full-time for the last 4 years. I guess he went to night school for 4 years, full-time for 2. But anyway, he moved us down to South Georgia. Our farm's in northeast Georgia, in Athens. And he moved us down to this little bitty town of 300 people in South Georgia called Araby. And he built a grain elevator down there. So it was still in agriculture, and we made hog feed, cow feed, treated wheat.
How many brothers and sisters?
I got one younger brother, great guy.
Well, how did you get to Nashville? And how did your career start?
Well, when I was living in Araby, I would raise the window up in my bedroom. We didn't have air conditioning, and we lived right against the railroad tracks. And all the white people lived on one side, all the black people lived on the other side. And the first band I ever heard, a real band with drums and bass and guitars and all that, was the Black Church coming across the railroad tracks, as funny as that might sound. And so I just grew up loving music. On my daddy's side of the family, I don't think my daddy ever bought a record in his life or listened to the radio. I can't remember, other than the farm reports, you know, there being any music. And then we all moved back to Athens, Georgia, and I finished high school there, and I went to the University of Georgia also, and kind of sang my way through school. I just started singing when I was a sophomore. I had a buddy of mine from high school there in Athens, and we learned a few songs and went over at the Holiday Inn and sang about 3 songs for a man over there, and he says, "You're hired." So all of a sudden I was singing for a living, and that was in 1973. So
What happened after that?
I sang beach music. It was a form of rhythm and blues music. Then I put together a country rock band and did that for 3 years. Then I put together a straight soul band, did that for 3 years while Sheila was finishing up her master's work at Georgia. And she came home. We were living on the farm, and she came home and said, "We're gonna move to Nashville." And I said, "Really?" I was scared. And
She just decided we're gonna.
well, she said, "If we don't go to Nashville and give it a shot, you're going to be second guessing yourself the rest of your life," which is true. So.
And how old were you?
27, I think, when we moved to Nashville, which is pretty old, really, these days.
T. Graham, you moved to Nashville at 27. All things started changing, and we're going to talk about that when we come back from break, because I want to hear about Hell and High Water. T. Graham, your wife Sheila, you arrived to Nashville. What were those early days like?
Well, we didn't know nothing about nothing. It was totally starting over. I hung around Music Row. I found out where the movers and shakers went for happy hour, what bars they went to. And that's where I got to know so many people, man. I just went to the places they congregated and just did my best T. Graham Brown sales job on them. And Sheila got a job working at Kastner Knot, which is a department store, at their cosmetics counter, and waiting on tables at a restaurant at night. She had 2 jobs. I think then I started singing demos. I made a few contacts. I started singing songwriter demos, and that paid like $20 a song, something. We didn't make a living off of me, but I was networking like crazy, and Sheila was paying the bills. So
when did you get your big break? Do you remember?
Well, I think through singing demos. A songwriter writes a song, and if the songwriter isn't a good singer, they'll hire a singer when they demo the song to sing the song. And then they pitch the song all over Music Row to producers, record executives, everybody that they can get to listen to it. And I was singing. I was the voice on a ton of demos. I mean, a lot. I might have been the most in-demand guy over there on Music Row at the time. So my voice got spread around to all the record labels, to all the producers. And a couple of years later, I guess we moved there in 82, so I guess in 84, a buddy of mine that had produced a lot of those demos went to work for Capitol Records. Capitol Records restructured their whole Nashville office. They had new from top to bottom. And in their first meeting, they said they brought up my name, and it was kind of a, hey, I think you want me to tell you exactly what it was? Well, he stood up and said, I think we ought to sign T. Graham Brown. He's a singing SOB. And it went around the table. I think we ought to sign T. Graham Brown. Same thing, same thing. Everybody said the same thing. And then the president of the label said, we'll sign the SOB. So that's how it started. And
well, what happened then?
well, I had a singles deal, what they call a singles deal. I didn't have an album deal, and I had a thing that called for 6 singles. They had the option to put out 6 singles. So in other words, they put out one song. If it didn't do well, they had the option to put out another single and so forth and so forth. But it happened that the first one they put out went high enough in the charts, it was a top 40. And it went high enough in the charts that they called for an album. So when they called for an album, that's when I kind of felt official. So I went down to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and cut the album. And they put out a song called I Tell It Like It Used to Be, and it was a big hit. And that's what people probably first remember me by.
Who inspired that song?
I sang the demo on it. 3 guys, Bucky Jones, Michael Garvin, and Ron Hellard wrote it. It was one of the guys that I sang their song demos for. And I Tell It Like It Used to Be was one of them. And nobody had put it out, recorded it and put it out by the time I cut it.
So number one, how did it change your life?
Well, it just put me, it totally changed everything. I went from not singing in front of very many people. There's a place called the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, and it only seats probably 100, 150, maybe. That's probably the biggest place in Nashville I'd play. I didn't play out live very much. And all of a sudden I was on the tour with Kenny Rogers. I mean, like, bam, like all of a sudden I was thrown out there in front of thousands and tens of thousands of people, so I had to learn it pretty quick.
And I read that you were on the road over 300 days a year.
Yeah, I mean, it was hectic.
What was like that?
It was just a fog. I mean, golly, think about it. We were in a different place every day, visiting radio stations, trying to get them to play our record.
Did Sheila go with you?
No, never, because she was holding down the fort. Sheila didn't start traveling with me till a few years ago, probably, I don't know, 10
What was it
maybe.
like on the road that long away from your family?
A blur. I mean, just, it was physically demanding, you know, mentally demanding, but very rewarding and very much fun, you know. I mean, golly, I was getting to sing in front of 15, 20,000
Any funny
people.
stories on the tour you can think of?
Oh, just the usual goofiness. We would go into a town, all the buses. Kenny Rogers, for instance, carried, you know, several tractor trailers full of stuff, 5 or 6 buses. We had one bus and one band, and we all rode on the same bus. And we'd pull into a place, the back door of some arena somewhere, and go in and goof around. And I had a little bike, one of those fold-up bikes that I'd ride around inside the place. And
Did you ever forget where you were? What town?
yeah, sometimes, yeah. But Kenny always took great care of us. He traveled with a chef, so we always ate like gourmet meals. He included the crew, us. It was all like everybody was invited, you know. It wasn't like he acted like he was some big star better than everybody, but he was flying around in a jet, and he had a couple of helicopters, and he had a tennis pro that traveled with him, and a photographer, and, you know, all the accoutrements.
Well, it definitely changed your life. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, you know, when Jesus, his second miracle, was changing Water into Wine, but you brought out a huge hit. It was just the opposite, Wine to Water. I want to talk about that and some of the, struggles and issues that you faced and how God has just, changed your life and where God is leading you. But we're going to talk about that after the break. T. Graham, before we start talking about Wine to Water, we were talking earlier about your songwriting. Let's talk about it a little bit.
Well, when I moved to Nashville, it was April or May of '82, and through my networking, I signed a publishing deal with a company called CBS Songs, a big national publisher, probably 6 months later, which was really quick. It later morphed into EMI, and it's morphed into Sony owns it now. But I just started writing over there. I wasn't that great of a writer, I didn't think, but there was a guy over there named Alex Harvey that was an awesome writer. He passed away a couple of years ago, and he's the guy that wrote Delta Dawn for Tanya Tucker, and he wrote Reuben James that Kenny Rogers had a big hit on. He was a famous writer and a great singer, artist himself. And he invited me over to his house. I was really nervous about writing with somebody of that caliber. So we had a 63 Volkswagen at the time. We moved to Nashville in a 59 Ford station wagon and a 63 Volkswagen, and drove that old rusted out Volkswagen over there and went down in his basement. We wrote this song called Hell and High Water. And so we pitched it all over town. We couldn't get anybody to cut it. We pitched it to Kenny, we pitched it to everybody. So when it came time to cut the first album for Capitol, I didn't think anything with my name on it could be any good. I was not confident in my writing. And so Capitol said, you ought to cut Hell and High Water. And I thought, oh man, I don't know. And then we went and cut it. Then they said, we're gonna put Hell and High Water out. And I thought, man, y'all gonna kill my career before it gets started. And they put it out, and it was the #1. So it just showed what I know. And so we were out there working hard and doing shows. I played every major arena in North America. We played all. Kenny Rogers was the biggest thing there was. And I did over 300 shows with him over the course of 4 years, I guess. And then I was going out doing T. Graham Brown shows. I mean, we were working just about every day. And if we weren't working, we're traveling. There's an old saying, they don't pay you for the gig, they pay you to get to the gig. It's riding on the bus is the hardest part of the whole job, not sleeping like you would at home. So anyway, I'm partying the whole time, and I started drinking when I was in high school and just never let up. I went to the University of Georgia, but I majored in partying, I think. And so it was a given that I was a drinker and pot smoker and hellraiser. That was part of the deal that you got with me. And then I had friends that we were on the same wavelength. Keith Whitley was one of my best friends, and we toured together, and he died of alcohol poisoning. And he was at home. We had just gotten in off the road, and then like 2 days later, he choked on his own vomit. I mean, it was pitiful. You would think that it would have knocked some sense into my head, but it didn't. His manager called me up and said, man, we found Keith dead this morning. And I thought, man, this is crazy. And he started crying, said, can I send these reporters and news people to your house? I can't face them. So all these news people showed up at my house. And I had to be the face of the Keith Whitley tragedy. But I didn't slow down. Keith and I used to go to this psychologist. They made us go to this psychologist on Music Row and sit in this group therapy thing where everybody whined about their problems and everybody was trying to get sober. And Keith and I were looking at our watch saying, boy, when's this going to be over? We want to go get a drink. I mean, we were totally not buying into the program. So And then I would try to, the Capitol Records people said, look, if you don't get sobered up, we're going to drop you. So I'd get on the horse and ride a while and fall off, get on the horse and ride a while and fall off. And then we wrote this song later, a few years later, called Wine into Water. My friend Bruce Birch, who just passed away, great songwriter, wrote a lot of number ones. We wrote some hits for me together, and he was cutting grass, he told me, and this Wine into Water idea came to him. And I think he was really thinking about me because we were such close friends, and I was in bad shape. There was another friend named Ted Hewitt, and we all got together and we wrote this song called Wine into Water, and it's just a prayer to get sober. That's all the song is. But I didn't get sobered up and stay sober. I'd be drunk again, sober up and get drunk again. And then finally, I'm 67 years old, so about 11 or 12 years ago, I didn't write the day down, but I woke up with a hangover. I mean, I got to where I was pouring vodka in my coffee and firing up a joint first thing in the morning. I mean, that's where I was. That's where my head was. I was just about to die. I woke up one morning. It's just a cliche of a story that you've heard before, but it's true. I looked in the mirror. I was just sick and tired of being tired and sick. And I looked in the mirror one day, and I looked like death. And I said, man, what are you doing? You're about to blow everything. You're about to lose your family, your job, everything. And you know, I asked God to help me, and I have not had one craving since that moment. It's amazing. I went from thinking 24 hours, if I was awake, I was wanting to make sure I had another drink handy, or another joint handy, or a pill, or whatever it was. I wasn't, if I got to where when the bus would pull into a town, my eyes would search for a liquor store, and I can zero in on them. To this day, it was such a habit. I'll spot a liquor store, bam, just like radar. I don't stop anymore, or even think about stopping, but what I'm saying is I would see the liquor store, and then I would go, okay, now I know I can go buy something to drink. That's what I was thinking about. And I went from thinking about that constantly to never thinking about it.
Isn't God good?
Like that, bam.
He's so wonderful. You know, before we close, I want to know where you're going and what is God doing in your life now?
Shoot, man, I'm having the time of my life. I'm having more fun. You know, when I quit drinking, I was scared I was going to lose all my fun. I was scared that I wasn't going to have any fun anymore. I always looked at the people that weren't partying as a bunch of squares. I would think, don't y'all know there's a party going on over here? What are y'all even thinking? I mean, we're having fun over here. And then I found out, bam, that I was having way more fun now than I ever was when I was doing all that whiskey and dope. And I know it sounds corny, but it's the truth. And I'm sure some people will see this, you know. But hey, I'm here to tell you, man, I've been there, and I know what I'm talking about. And I can get people that have addiction problems or mental health problems. I'm just severely bipolar. And thank goodness Sheila got me to a good doctor that finally diagnosed. And that was one thing that my doctor told me that was fueling my drinking and all, was my manic.
Well, I know somebody right now is listening to you, and you're an inspiration to them. And T. Graham, I am just so honored, and thank you so much for coming onto the show. And I know somebody is being blessed right now. See,
that's the thing. I end every show with Wine into Water, and I tell them my story because you never know who's going to get blessed. And I was talking to Larry Gatlin the other day, and I'd done my testimony during a show, and I said, man, do you think this is too corny or anything? He said, man, don't you ever stop doing that, because the day that you don't do it, there's probably somebody out there that needs to hear it.
That's right.
And Wine into Water continues to help people. I urge people to go on YouTube and watch the wine and the water videos. I've had people tell me it's changed their mind about suicide. I had an old couple write me a letter that their son had dropped dead cutting their grass, and they made a suicide pact and were going to kill themselves, and her wine and water changed her mind. This woman told me she'd been beaten up by her husband again, went out on a lonely road, was going to shoot herself in the head, turned on the radio, and bam, wine and water came on, changed her mind. This football player in Tampa told me that he started smoking crack. He lost his 3 daughters, his wife, his job, his house, went through his money, pulled his truck out on New Year's Day out in the field, hooked up a hose to the exhaust pipe, ran it in the cab, going to kill himself, turned on the radio, and bam, wine and water came on. I got stories like that all day long. I hear from people every week.
Well, I know somebody today is listening to you.
Well, there's a way out. I'm telling you, there's a way out. And Jesus Christ can change your life, and it's real. God is real, and don't ever doubt it. I'm living proof.
T. Graham, thank you. My friend, are you that one person that needs to hear T. Graham's message today? Lay it down at the cross. He will change your life. This is today's Nashville. This is faith.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.